fourth generation member of the Ambedkar family, the great-grandnephew of Dr. Ambedkar, who will come and speak after me. So you'll have to bear with me until you get to hear the great scholar here. So April is Dalit History Month, and I want to recognize that today. It's been recognized in BC to remember the important people and events in the history of the Dalit community or the scheduled class or scheduled tribes communities. And Equality Day recognizes these individuals, but also acknowledges the strength and resilience of the Dalit community in overcoming hardships and advocating for social justice and equality for all. I think that was really important for me to place that today in the commemoration of Dalit History Month. And some of you may not be aware of Dalit History Month. April is also Sikh Heritage Month and other months, but for us, for today, this is a very important day. So I'm going to bring you up a little bit around the issue of caste. The word caste is derived from the Portuguese word casta, meaning lineage, breed, or caste, or class. Or race, sorry. And it finds its roots in the Aryan movement of peoples in Europe and Middle East. Oh, wow, we'll have to get more chairs. So maybe our staff can make some room for the people who are coming in, and then we can move some chairs around. You're welcome. So the caste movement can be traced back to 1500 to 1000 before Christ from the Caucasus Mountains, and it traveled all the way to these. As the Aryans moved, they brought with them some ideologies, and caste embedded itself in the subcontinent of India. So caste is really social classes that have been designed by the Aryans in 1500 BC. A lot of times people don't think that South Asians are Aryans. The northern part of India are also Caucasian and Aryan race. From the Caucasian and Aryan race, we are not always understood to be as such. But the Aryans, when they came into India, forced the native Indians, the Dravidians, into the south and made them subservient to them. As a result, the caste system originated based on ethnic, social, and economic distinctions. And there are 4 main castes and hundreds of subcastes. So it's a very complicated system that not all of us can easily understand. But perhaps a simple overarching view will get you to a point of understanding. There's also a 5th group which remains outside the caste hierarchy, which is excluded. So these are the main caste groups, and this is the hierarchy of the way they are established. The Brahmins are the priestly class, or so-called the cultured elite, who learned how to read and run the religious ceremonies and ideologies of the culture. And then Kshatriyas, who are the warrior class and the ruling aristocracy. The Vaishyas, who were farmers, merchants, and professional class, and then there were the low-status laborers and artisans. And then there was the untouchables, who were not included in the caste system. So how does caste shape society? I mean, in Canada, caste, as Jai has said, caste discrimination has traveled along with us as our baggage into the diaspora. And it shows up a lot. It shows up a lot when people are going to marry. It is specific to the kind of work one person can do. And it, at some places even controls what you can eat and what you can touch or where you can live. For a great majority of Indians, the caste system has played out an enormous role in our history. I grew up in India, so I understand caste. It's unfortunate that we have brought that with us into Canada. However, all of us try very hard to either find a way to dismantle it or not to practice it. And it's a type of social hierarchy that's based on a person's occupation. And the occupation is based on your karma, on what you bring to that position in life. And then there's a religious duty as well to uphold caste. So it's complicated as well as insidious and innocuous and everywhere that you go and anything that you do. And acceptance is fixed at birth, so you can never change it. It's not something you can unsubscribe from. There has been a diffusion of caste in the urban setting because people go into urban centers where their geography is changed, and there is a diffusion there of caste. But as I show you later, it still shows up. And so we're very proud as Indians to talk about kinship. And I know the Scots talk about kinship, the First Nations groups talk about kinship, and we ourselves are very proud of kinship, but the kinship has its challenges as well. Within the kins, we don't intermarry outside our caste group. That's not just required, but inculcated in all of us. And then how we eat. High caste Brahmins do not sit with someone of a lower caste, and different diets exist for different castes. We are divided by occupation, as it was shown earlier. There is legal status. In India, caste is an illegal activity. You cannot practice caste. You can be taken to court, and there have been instances where they have won. But it continues in the social community interactions. It continues to show itself. Visible identifiers of caste exist and are enforced. So this idea initially of caste was around purity and pollution, that there were certain people who were pure and certain people who were polluted. So this inherited occupational role was reinforced by religion. Religion decided that caste, where you sat within that hierarchy, and you couldn't alter that hereditary status. You couldn't change that. It continued through your life and for your next generations. And of course, socially enforced restrictions on intermarriage. In Canada, I find in the diaspora, caste shows up mostly around marriage. Mostly it shows up when kids are marrying somebody outside their caste. That's where families tend to get into strife. The practice is everywhere, but where the strife and the conflict comes is generally around marriage. Segregation in India and South Asia around where you live is based in my own village, where mostly we visit the village of my husband. In that village, you can tell the lines, how they are divided, where people pray, where people live, where they go and socialize. Now the shopping is a little less complicated, but generally the living areas are segregated. And for many, many communities, there is subjection to debt bondage. So they're always in debt and cannot repay that debt through the generations. And the debt is so large that it's probably never going to be paid in their lifetime. And this last one about this lack of respect and dignity that's prevalent everywhere when you travel or are living in India. I'm not an expert on caste, and maybe Dr. Ambedkar will speak more to the issue of color, but caste has been identified around color as well, where the twice born, so karma, you'll be born as a Brahmin again and again, but given this white color of whiteness, and you'll see the colors as they change down the line, and there's an expectation that higher caste people have lighter skin, although, as it says, in South Asia, in the southern part of India, that is not the norm. So I want to quickly bring you to post-secondary landscapes. We are here to talk about how does caste manifest itself in the post-secondary landscape. And I had a quote from someone who spoke at Harvard. Recently, Harvard included caste as a category in discrimination. And this is a comment by Raj Muthu, who was an alumnus of Harvard. So he said he received derogatory comments about the intellect of oppressed class people like him. And then there was this proud narration about reservation. In India has a 25% policy where people of oppressed classes are given special dispensation and special allowances to go to university, to get into occupations, especially government jobs. But this proud narration against affirmative action prior to the admission into Harvard, and to this monopoly about celebrations and his deepened sense of alienation, humiliation, and social exclusion. I realize here too at UFE, we have a very large, Jat Sikh population, and I'm looking at, when I read this, I realized the celebrations we tend to do are based on that dominant group of people who've decided to ignore the rest. And so I'm sure the there are students here at UFE who feel isolated and excluded. And this constantly, he was vigilant and worried about his being outed as a Dalit. You know, that for me, that's just so tragic that his identity had to be hidden from his friends. And we heard from Prem Paryar at the conference. He had spoken at the conference, and he's from California State in a university, and he said that when he reached the U.S., he thought that caste discrimination would be different. But in the U.S., the South Asian diaspora, including the Nepali diaspora, are educated, so they don't believe in caste discrimination. But he said, I was wrong, totally wrong. And he spoke at our conference on Saturday and spoke eloquently about his work to dismantle caste. So we heard this comment from students. This is at the conference on Saturday. This is the conversation directly from students that I quoted, that I'm putting up on the board. One of them said that someone said to her, there's people like us, and then there are those that clean our shoes. And this is recent times. This is not a long time ago. They said they found the idea of affirmative action. People talked about it as discriminatory to the dominant class, that there was that conversation going on around them. And there was this, they also felt that there was a stigma to caste and that they carried generational trauma with them. It affected their relationship with the schools and with education. Sometimes their education was totally oblivious to their oppression. Issues of identity, they said being Dalit was only part of their identity. They wanted to live a fulsome and authentic life, and they want to include that identity in their lives. Name profiling, just from the last name or the name of the person, you can tell what caste they are. And they said that profiling continued on campus. This idea of a suffocation that they felt of their future potential. I thought they were such powerful comments. And this one, that institutions like UFE probably claiming that there is no caste discrimination without having investigated it, or there is no discrimination on campus. Slurs were common on campus, and there was no acknowledgement of their impact on people. They said caste hierarchy was present in the classroom, both with their peers and with the teachers, with the professors. So important to understand what's happening in the classroom, who is teaching caste and in what way, and how does caste show up. So what do we need to do? One of the things the students said, that there needs to be more activism on campus. We need to engage a bit more with students, and not just students who are of the oppressed class, but all students. Intellectual spaces are needed. Ordinary stories need to be told, and ordinary stories are very powerful. The diaspora are bringing their baggage with them, as has been said by Jai. The BC Human Rights Code has been asked to include caste as a category of discrimination in BC. But before we find a solution, we need to acknowledge the truth about caste discrimination in Canada, even before we get to reconciliation. So we need to bring the truth of caste out into the community, into our work, our universities, into our classrooms, into our discussions. And this modern form of untouchability, where students talked about being excluded from groups and not being included in their class assignments with other students. So this modern form of untouchability in the social sphere. Caste practices, they said, eliminates dignity and equality in Canada. So policies on campus. So we're asking for this. We're asking that the policies on campus include caste to further solidify UFE's commitment to diversity and equity, and to ensure protections for caste-oppressed students, staff, faculty, and community members. Given that thousands of South Asian students come to North America each year to study, and the prevalence of caste discrimination, leading educational spaces have amended their anti-discrimination policies to add caste as a protected category. So some of the universities who've done that in North America: Carleton University Academic Association added caste. Toronto School District recognized caste as the basis of discrimination and forwarded their motion to the Ontario Human Rights Commission to create the framework to address it within the schools. And we hope that it won't be just in the schools, it'll be all across Ontario. The BC Human Rights Tribunal recently awarded $9,000 in damages to a man who was a victim of caste discrimination in the taxi industry. And the universities in the US who have included caste as a protected category include Harvard, the University of California, Davis, Colby College in Rhode Island, California State Universities, and Brown Universities. And then the numbers of these universities keep increasing. So this is our call to UFE. It's part of our petition to call on UFE to recognize caste within its anti-discrimination policy on the basis of recent interpretation by the BC Human Rights Tribunal, and commit to protecting caste-oppressed peoples against discrimination. And so it's an urgent civil and human rights call that requires immediate action. And part of our petition is to request your support to recognize the humanity of the reality of caste-oppressed faculty, staff, and students. We don't even know who is feeling oppression on campus. So first of all, we need to also do that work once we get the petition started. We need to find out what kind of caste oppression is happening on campus. Given UFE's commitment to ensuring a safe and equal working and learning environment, adding caste will increase our commitment to equity and diversity. So that's our call. And that's the work you're going to do once we hand you the petition, to see how, whether you agree with everything that's in the petition, if you can sign it today, and if not, we will put it online. And then to see whether you can help us be allies in your departments, in your divisions, wherever you are, to help us maybe gather some steam around this topic and take it to the Director of Equity and Diversity. We'd asked her to come, but she couldn't be here today, and then take it to the President, and hopefully in the union as well. That's it. Can I say thank you to my team? This is not me alone.